All right, guys, this is going to be part 5. We're going to cover some tools today. We're going to cover how to swap the components on these MG3 feed trays. These Royal Tiger kits are coming with the ears busted off of these feed trays. They're also coming with a stripped good feed tray. So you got to take all these components and swap them over. So we'll do a little video on that. I had a recommendation to get a microphone, so we'll see how that works out for us. But we'll start with the feed trays and then we'll go into the tooling. So I've got one here that I can use as a visual reference. But basically what you've got inside these trays, there's a pin that runs this direction. This holds the actual latch for your drum carrier, round drum. And then there's a spring there, obviously. Then there's another pin that runs this direction. That pin holds your anti-pull pawl that keeps the belt from being able to pull out. So in order to get this pin out, it's actually got a small cutout for this pin, the cross pin that holds this guy in place. So the first thing you want to do on this end towards your ears is a circlip. You want to pop that circlip out. Sometimes these can be a pain in the butt. Hard to see, but there it is. So there's that clip. Then that pin pushes out that direction. Makes it easier if you grab it with a pair of pliers. Pull that pin right out, set it there to the side. So that pin is what holds your spring. That spring is what holds that pawl in place. So you want to push that over to the side and get it where it's no longer on this part, and then that guy pops out. So that spring actually goes in this little slot right here, and that's what gives you tension to that anti-pull pawl. Set that out of the way. This spring will come out. Set it out of the way. Now that those components have been removed, this pin here can come out. We'll grab it with the pliers, tighten those up slightly. Grab it with the pliers and out it'll come. There you can see the little notch in this pin. So this pin is what physically holds that pin from falling out. And then of course that pin has that circle. So here's the other little spring that retains or that gives the tension to this guy. So that's it. It's stripped. Like I said, this one's got a busted ear. I'll put it in the pile because we've replaced these ears before. So it's not totally bad, but it's easier to swap these components over. So here's the new tray. Both ears are intact. So you start with this guy, and you can clean it up a little if you want. This one's pretty dusty. I'll just wash it off or wipe it off here real quick, brush it off. That looks a little better. So I've got this one here just for reference for me. Bottom side, hanger facing out. This little guy. There's a flat there on that, and it meets this flat right here. That's the stop. So the internal spring, if you can see it in here, the hook end physically goes on that latch, and then the other end goes inside here. Sorry, inside here, and hits this piece on that hanger. So we'll clean this up just like we did that other piece. Of course, we'll drop it too. There, that looks a little better. So from here, the hook faces the bottom, which is facing up currently on our part here. If I remember correctly, it's easier to let that hang out and then push it in place once we get the pin in. So we'll take the pin in from the bottom. Make sure everything's aligned. Come on, yeah. There it is. So I'm going to make sure that spring's in the right spot. On the latch itself, we'll push that pin right on through, all the way down. So right now, your pin is in, but your spring is in tension. So we'll flip it around, and then we're just going to push this until it goes behind this guy right here, and that'll give you your spring tension. Hook one works a little bit better. Try to slide it up just a hair. Be a little bit of a pain because it's a decent spring. Oh, come on. Got to get the right leverage on it. See if this works any better. It's got the notch in it. Might hold that leg a little bit better for us. There it is. Now you get your spring tension back there. So this pin's in. You're going to rotate it until you can see this guy right here. It needs to face that hanger. So that cutout wants to face that direction. We'll clean this spring up like we did everything else. So this spring, it's kind of hard to see. The flats, so this is the top side of the feed tray. The flats face the bottom side like that, and then this will get rotated up and into position. So I'll stick it in just like this. I'll wipe this guy off too. We're just going to slide this pin in here, get it started. On that spring. Grab the pin, that'll give you some leverage so you can line this side up. Pull it back just a hair. All right, there it is. That pin has gone through. Give this a little wipe down. So the paws face in towards the inside of the feed tray instead of outside. So this just falls right in that hole just like that. And we're going to tension it up with our finger. And then just slide this into place. Must fall out on us. There we go. So if you notice, I've got this spring slid over to one side so I can try to leverage it into place. There we go. Now that I got it behind there, you can just slide this right on over. Oops. Of course, the damn paw popped out. Slide that back over. Put the paw back in. Easy peasy. Oh, looks like that spring side of the spring popped. Push it back into place. There we go. Spring is tensioned. That's that. Now the last thing to do here. Oh, that pin popped out on us on this side. Let's get that line back up. Put your circlip back on. These things are kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. Bada bing, bada boom. That's all back together and swapped over. So bad one, O marked. There's no real difference in that tray besides this one's 0 marked. So even that one's 0 marked, but the trays are the same. It's this inner paw. And it's all the same. All right, so now we're going to jump into some of the tools that we use that are kind of available and some tools that are not available. So here we are set up. Got this receiver that we're working on right now. Excuse me. And the vise, we'll pull that off. One of the things that we use here to hold these guns in a vise, pull this out. This is an anti-aircraft tripod head. We just clamp that in the vise, and that allows us to hold these receivers in the vise while we work on them. So literally just goes like that. So pretty cool. Another thing that we see, since these guns have been cut, sometimes when you weld them back together, you have what they call heat or weld shrinkage and warpage of the sheet metal. So sometimes this will be pinched and your bolt doesn't want to ride in the rails. So we use one of these jack bolts, and it's just a rod coupling. It's been turned down on the lathe to fit inside the rail, and the bolt that's been fitted so it'll go inside the rail. What we do with this, it goes in here like it just was, and we'll physically use this to jack the receiver apart. Where is my tool? Don't know where the fuck my wrench went. Okay. So, you just take, you can use a wrench or whatever you hear. I usually have a wrench. I can't find it on the bench at the moment. You just put that in there, and as you spin the rod coupling, the head of that bolt stays in place, and it physically jacks the receiver out, and it'll pry that receiver apart and get you some of that warpage out to make space for your bolt head. So that's what we use the jack bolts for. These were originally sold back in the day as rivet backers for crushing your rivets. We don't do that anymore because it works, but you've got a lot of failed rivets that they just don't last. So we no longer use this tool for riveting our rails, but we do use the tool still, like I said, for jacking purposes to get the receiver back into shape after warpage and welding and stuff like that. So it does come in handy for that sort of thing. And then pull it back out, and then you can slide your bolt head in there. carburetor's hidden. Yeah, you can see how that's tight. So it still needs to be jacked out. And sometimes what you got to do is fit this top portion of the rail too, because you may have, if you look from the rear end down, that's that top portion of the rail, you'll see it come bow out a little bit sometimes. So you can get in there and fit those rails so your bolt rides smooth. You want your bolt to ride smooth. You should be able to put your bolt and carrier in there and tip your receiver back and forth, and that bolt just slide back and forth without any real resistance. So this one's going to need a little bit more fitting, but so that's your jack bolt. This one you can see it was clearanced to crush rivets, but when you air hammer the rivets from the outside, you don't get the best crush. So we've built our own jig. We'll take you over here to take a look at that. So this is our receiver welding jig, or welding jig. So this is our receiver rivet jig. This top portion is actually out of one of those pneumatic rivet crushers. This top portion is out of one of those pneumatic rivet crushers. What we've had to do is modify the top side of it to clearance inside the receiver, because you grab a receiver. So this top side is out of one of those pneumatic rivet crushers. We just use the top portion. We've got some custom bucks in here. One is just a flat and one is a cup that cups your receiver rivets. This is just a receiver piece, for example, but this slides in sort of like that. Of course, your receiver is sitting sideways or like this. And then you can jack up and it crushes that rivet from the inside. And we've had way better success with our rivet work with this. And the rivet work, I can do a full set of 10 rivets in a couple of minutes. So this is just a piece of steel plate. This is a modified C-yoke out of one of those pneumatic riveters. We've clearanced the top side to fit inside the receiver. We've reinforced this guy to help keep it from spreading apart under all this tension. This, of course, is just a bottle jack. And then we just built a stand for it. So when people ask me if I sell rivet jigs, no, we don't. This thing is 3 feet tall. So it's not a tool that we sell. But this is what we use for our rivets. And it works quite well. This is actually the second C-yoke, because the first one broke after, I think we decided after a year and a half of use, the first one broke. And these C-yokes are about 150 bucks. So we replaced it and reinforced it a little bit differently this time. But that's what we use for our rivets. As far as the welding jigs go, we've got videos on the welding jigs already and how to use those. We did have some comments on how to use or how to get your receiver portions on that jig and how to get everything lined up. The welding jig is just the truing manual, basically. It gives you a straight line through the whole receiver. Of course, your receiver's been cut. So you use the rails and that jig to give you a straight line, and then you have to clamp and get your receiver on that jig as you're welding. And sometimes we got to cut these things apart. That receiver right there, we ended up cutting probably 3 or 4 times. It's a semi-auto that we're building right now. The post T that was in a couple of videos ago, that one had to be cut apart a couple times to get stuff to jive and line back up. And that's just part of it. Generally, it takes us from start to finish about 5 business days to build one of these. We could probably do them faster than that, but we don't like to rush them. So we put out one a week. And I've usually got 1 or 2 sitting on the shelf over there that Paul's already done with before I've gotten to it. But that's a little bit on some of the tools that we use, how to install your stuff on that feed tray, how to swap those components. This is part 5, so we'll be doing some more videos in this series, but that's part 5. We'll be doing a couple more videos in this series on various different things. If you got something you want us to specifically go over or instructional tutorial video on, you can leave us a comment. I've been trying to keep up with those and incorporate that stuff into these videos, but I'm also trying to keep the videos at 20-30 minutes. There's tons of content that we can put out on these, but keeping the videos a little bit shorter. I mean, I know 20-30 minutes is above most people's attention spans, but anyways, this is part 5, so y'all have a good day.